Okay, so now we'll talk about the answers to the Chapter 5 quiz. The first question is, the concept of cross-price elasticity of demand refers to the... To answer this question, I would recommend writing down the formula for it. So you do need to memorize formulas, unfortunately. Luckily, you're going to be able to use your book for a portion of the exam, and so you can pull them from the book when you're able to use it. But when you write it down, remember the formula is elasticity between good A and B. The cross-price elasticity between good A and B is percentage change in quantity demand for good A over the percentage change in price for good B. And so this is not correct. The last one here, this second to last one is not correct. The second one sounds close, but notice here we have the ratio of percentage change in price over the percentage change in quantity demanded. But in fact, it's quantity demanded over percentage change in price. And so A is the right answer. The ratio of the percentage change in quantity demanded of a good to the percentage change in price. So this was a little bit tricky. Both A and B sound right, but the way that they phrase it, ratio of this to this, ratio of this to this means we put the first over the second. All right, moving on, question 2. If the quantity demanded of agricultural output is very unresponsive to a fall in price, the demand for agricultural output is? It's price inelastic. You can think about elasticity and responsiveness as basically synonyms. So if it's very responsive, it's very, think about a rubber band stretching. It's very elastic. But if it's not responsive, then it doesn't change. It's inelastic. You could also draw this if you wanted to. It's helpful to draw demand and supply curves on exams. What would it look like? Well, it would be like you have so there's a fall in price. And maybe it's a big fall in price. But quantity demanded, it increases, but only by a little bit. So this is what we're looking at here. And this is just called price inelastic. Question 3. The price elasticity of demand for the segment EF is? Well, to answer this, you have to, again, write down the formula for price elasticity of demand. And it is percentage change in quantity demanded over percentage change in price. And we know that the percentage change in quantity demanded is change in Q over Q average. And the percentage change in price is change in P over P average. And so we can plug these numbers in now. Between here, right, E and F, what's the change in Q? It's 100. And the average Q is 450. And so you could calculate the percentage change, and what would you find it to be? 66? I don't think so. 22. But I would say, in fact, you don't even have to solve it. You could leave it as this. Because underneath that, you're going to put change in price, which is what? From here to here. Change in price is 10 over the average price, which is 15. So, in fact, you can just simplify this. And how do you do this, a fraction on top of a fraction? Well, multiply both the top and the bottom by the same thing. In particular, 15 over 10. Now, notice, this whole thing, this in parentheses, is equal to what? Equals to 1, right? So you can multiply 1 by this, and you haven't changed it. So that's why you can do that. But notice this will, this will cancel. This will be 150 over 150. This is 1. And so then you just move things up top here. And so what you'll have is just 15, I'm going to have to rewrite that, 15 over 10, and so that equals 1,500 over 4,500. You can chop off the zeros, and you see that's 15 over 45, and then simplify even further, and you see it's 1/3. But remember, it's negative 1/3. You should always remember that when we're talking about price elasticity of demand, it's going to be negative. Always. So it's negative 1/3 or negative 0.33%. Sorry. This is not a percent. This is just a number, negative 0.33. And so D is the right answer. Question 4. If a demand curve is unit price elastic throughout, then a decrease in supply will result in. So here's what we're talking about. A demand curve that looks like this. Remember, normally in this class we're going to look at straight line demand curves. But for a straight line demand curve, the elasticity changes, right? It's elastic here and inelastic down here. Unit inelastic in the middle. But for demand curves that look like this, the elasticity is the same everywhere. And in particular, we're saying that this is unit price elastic everywhere. So the elasticity between here and here is negative 1. And the price elasticity demand between here and here is also negative 1. Okay, so then what happens when supply decreases? So that means supply goes from here to here. What happens? Well, we go from this point to this point. If it's unit price elastic, then the percentage change in quantity demanded, the percentage fall in quantity demanded is equal to the percentage increase in price, and so there will be no change in total revenue. Probably the best way to realize this answer is you don't have to memorize the relationship between price elasticity of demand and total changes in total revenue, because it's pretty intuitive. If it's inelastic and the price goes up, total revenue goes up. Think about it like an addictive good. If you increase the price, people are going to basically still consume the same amount. So you're going to increase your revenue. But if it's elastic and you increase the price, you lose a lot of customers. So your revenue will fall. But if it's unit price elastic, you increase the price, you lose customers, but not, you lose, if you increase the price by 10%, you lose 10% of your customers. So your total revenue stays the same. Now in the real world, just like it's unlikely for a good demand to be perfectly inelastic or perfectly elastic, it's also unlikely for it to be exactly unit elastic, right? It's usually going to be either greater than 1 or less than 1 in absolute value, not exactly 1. So this is a bit of a special case, but nonetheless, that is what's going on in this question. The pair of items, question 5, the pair of items that is most likely to have a negative cross price elasticity is, again, you don't have to memorize this. You can reason your way through it. Let's say we're talking about complements, like coffee and donuts. The price of coffee goes up. What happens to the quantity demanded for donuts? Goes down. And so that would be negative, right? And so that's what we're looking for. So we need to look at this and find complements. Hot dog and mustard, right? Another way maybe to start this is to write down the formula for price elasticity of cross price elasticity between two goods A and B. And so that is the percentage change in quantity demanded for good A over percentage change in price for good B. And so let's first start by thinking about margarine and butter. Well, by the way, if you look at these answers, you see that here we have what? Complements or substitutes? Substitutes, right? And here we have complements. What about aspirin and hamburgers? No relationship. And ketchup and whiskey? At least as far as all the drinks I've ever heard, no relationship. So these are unrelated goods. These are complements and these are substitutes. So let's start with margarine and butter first. If the price of margarine goes up, what's going to happen to the quantity demanded of butter? It's going to go up, right? Because if the price of margarine goes up, people are going to switch from margarine to butter, and the quantity demanded of butter is going to go up. So this will be positive, and this will be positive. The result will be a positive number. But we're looking for something with a negative cross-price elasticity, so it's not margarine and butter. What about hot dogs and mustard? Reason your way through that. If the price of hot dogs goes up, what happens to the quantity demanded for mustard? It goes down. So here we have a positive, here we have a negative. The result is going to be negative. That's what we're looking for. Question 6. A shirt manufacturer sold 10 dozen shirts when the price was $4, but sold 15 dozen shirts when the price was $3. The absolute value of the price elasticity of demand is, so it's asking you to calculate price elasticity of demand. You could, if you want to visualize this, draw yourself a demand curve and have a price of 4 and a price of 3. At 4, what is the quantity demanded? You could say 10 dozen. I'm a little bit confused about why they have 10 dozen. I mean, why don't they just say 120? Maybe they're trying to trick you. I don't think it matters actually, but let's just do it in terms of shirts. And then this would be the price. And then at a price of $3, what is the quantity of shirts demanded? 15 dozen or 180, right? All right. So let's just calculate the price elasticity of demand. Recall the formula: percentage change in quantity demanded over percentage change in price. And then the formula for percentage change in quantity demanded is change in Q over Q average. And the formula for percentage change in price is change in P over P average. So we have here change in Q. What's this change? 60. And what is the Q average? Well, it's 120 plus 180 divided by 2, and this is 150. Okay, now what about the change in P? It's 1. What's the average price? 3.5. So then, this is 3.5. To simplify this, right? So then the bottom part goes away. And what do we have? This is 180, 210, right? 60 times 3.5, 210, and then over 150. So this is 60 over 50 is 2/5, 1.4. Is it positive 1.4 or negative 1.4? Yeah, so it's negative. Price elasticity demand is always negative, as we said before. However, as you correctly pointed out, the question is asking about the absolute value. So we find that the absolute value of negative 1.4 is 1.4. Okay, so then what's the answer? Greater than 0 but less than 1? No. Equal to 1? No. Greater than 1 but less than 3. So you literally have to do, almost all of those steps every time. But the good news is the more you do it, so the more you practice, the easier it will get. Question 7, this is an easy concept one. If your income increases and your consumption of bagel increases, bagels are considered a normal good. Good. If a university decreases the price of tickets to football games in order to collect more revenue, it is assuming that demand for tickets is elastic. Why? Because they think if they lower the price, they're going to get a lot more sales, right? Question 9. Although in most cases the price elasticity of labor supply is blank, for some individuals it may be blank. Now I remember, I realize now I forgot to mention this in the lecture 5.3. But there is a paragraph at the end of that chapter 5 where they talk about this special case. So normally price elasticity of labor supply is positive. Because if the wage goes up, people want to work more. But it's possible that if you already have a high wage, and the wage goes up even more, you might actually decide to work less so that you can go on more vacations and enjoy more leisure time. So economists have observed this in markets. When wage goes up, sometimes people actually work less. This means that when we're talking about price elasticity of supply, so for price elasticity of demand, we say it's always negative. We can say for price elasticity of supply, it's almost always positive, except we have some empirical situations like this where sometimes it's negative. So the answer is C, positive, negative. But you're generally not going to be seeing this, too much, only maybe on a couple quiz questions. In other words, this is a kind of a rare situation to have a negative price elasticity of supply. And let me maybe at this point summarize some things. So we're talking about do signs matter? So let's talk about price elasticity to demand. Do they matter? Yeah. Sorry, not really, actually. No. No, they don't. Let's just say always negative. What about elasticity income? Yes, because it could be inferior or normal, right? What about elasticity of supply? Yes, but usually positive. And then finally we have the cross price elasticity. Yes, it matters because it could be complements or substitutes. Okay, last question. If the absolute value of price elasticity is greater than 1, this means that the demand curve in the region is elastic. That's just a definition. All right? So if you can do that well, then you'll do well on the online quizzes.